Simon Pryor from EasyJet, and the engineering at EasyJet, and he is going to be talking about growing a culture of quality and amazing testing.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Well, actually, it worked quite well, Best Talk going first, because there's a lot of segues from Best Talk into this, so you'll see what I mean when I get there. In case any of you haven't met me before, just a bit of an introduction to me. That's me and my little family. As Nicola said, head of QE at EasyJet, Twitter handle, blog. Somehow won the Testing Manager of the Year award at the European Software Testing Awards in 2021. Mainly my contribution to the testing industry, so doing stuff like this is quite a regular occurrence. Testing Peers podcast. Any listeners? Good. There's 2 of us in the room, so feel free to come and chat to us at some point today if you have any comments or questions or suggestions for topics for future episodes. But yeah, 82 episodes now and over 30,000 downloads, so it's growing. And we're also planning to run our first conference possibly this year, so look out for that as well. I run the Ministry of Testing meetups for Buckinghamshire, not run one this year yet, but it's in the pipeline for next year possibly. I'm also an advocate for neurodiversity. Neurodiversity runs in my family. I'm potentially undiagnosed autistic. My son's autistic, my sister's autistic, my youngest son's now being diagnosed for ADHD. So you can see it's quite a family affair almost, but it's something I advocate in the workplace to make sure workplaces are accepting of people with those conditions and able to work in the way they need to work. So again, any interest in that topic, come and talk to me. I've run this talk now for about a year or so. I've done a couple of keynotes on it, so I should be okay with this, but I'm evolving the talk as I go along. So there's some differences to this. You've seen it before. Mark, I'm looking at you. There's others in the room as well, possibly. I've changed slightly. My motivation for this, I joined EasyJet in January 2020. Now, we all know what happened in March 2020. Working for an airline during a pandemic was not an enjoyable experience. I was promised in January, you're going to have the world, you can build your team, we're going to grow, 300% growth, etc., etc. March come along, the whole world stopped. EasyJet had to do what it needed to do to keep surviving. Testing was one of the first things that was cut. The head of QA at the time was let go. Test managers were let go. One of the test managers that left said this to me, that ultimately nothing that I can do will resolve the wider cultural problems at EasyJet. Testing can improve, as we all can, but it will only be the tip of the iceberg. I took that as a personal challenge. I wanted to try and change the way we did things at EasyJet. EasyJet, historically, we've got 160, 170 systems that all plug together to make our estate, from our website, to our CRM systems, to our operational systems that actually roster flights and schedule flights and put the crew in the air and all that kind of stuff. There's over 160 systems in total. Every system is developed and tested differently by a different supplier or a different team or a different methodology. And it's been a mind shift to try and bring it all together. So I took that as a challenge and started using the term culture of quality to try and change the way we were doing things. So really, first thing is, what do we see as a culture of quality? Any comments in the room? Any ideas?
Collaboration.
Good start. Yeah, absolutely.
Sharing knowledge.
Yeah. Go with this then. Shared cross-team focus of delivering high-quality software that meets the user's needs, and all our practices support it. So everything we do is focused on delivering the high-quality software in a way that we're collaborating and working together. I then created a model for this. So again, set this in about 2020, started pushing this out. You start by setting the vision, the quality narrative. You then engage your current team. You get the passion for quality growing within your testing team or your quality team. You then start sharing that passion wider. You start posting things in the wider company blogs, or you have all hands and you get a 10-minute slot to talk about the wonders of QE. Then you start building relationships outside of the testing team and the wider business. And like Beth said in her talk as well, you find those allies, those champions that you can really rely on to help push and promote your cases. And then you use that momentum that you've built to then start rolling out changes to the process, new automation, new processes for testability, or whatever else you decide. And that's a continuous process that you grow. But that starts with defining the narrative. So again, another question for you. What are some of the common misconceptions around QA and testing?
How much time do you have?
Well, we've got all day, right? No. Well, I'll take one or two and then I'll move to my slide.
Safety net.
Safety net, yeah, good one.
We'll catch everything.
Yeah, we'll catch everything, absolutely. So start with the gatekeeper, right? We block everything from going to production. Everything has to go through test. We test everything. We just write and execute test cases. There's nothing more to our job. That's why you should be so cheap, right? We just want to break the software. Our role is just finding defects. Or the bottom one, which is my biggest frustration. We are solely responsible for quality. Thankfully, I'm not in a place now where that's the case. But what makes up this quality narrative? The narrative is how quality is measured and perceived within your organization. So you might have where it is now and where you want to get to. And those are the first two steps. Understand what your current landscape looks like, and then work out where you want to get to. Think about who owns quality. You know, just said, QE shouldn't own quality. Well, who does that? And actually, you might think it's everyone's responsibility. What do the dev managers think? What do the PMs think? What do the directors think? How is testing done? Is it done in the same way across all areas of the business? Or have you got some teams that are wholly manual testing? Some teams are investigating in exploratory testing. Some believe in 100% automation. How do you get that balance right across all areas? And what value does that testing provide? Then look at defining where you want to get to, that utopian view. How do you want testing and quality to be perceived? And you identify tangible ways for that to be visible in the business. So they go, hey, yeah, those QE guys, they know what they're doing. Look at their amazing stuff they've done. Is quality seen at the level it needs to be? Does the company need a chief quality officer? It's not going to happen, but we can dream. So here's what we had for EasyJet. When I joined, we were seen as the gatekeepers of production, especially in teams like our digital website, our mobile app. Everything had to go through the test team. We had 8 weeks of regression before we sent out a web release. Every team did it differently. The digital teams had that. The corporate teams had a very, very waterfall-y approach where they spent lots of time creating lots of manual scripts, not looking at what they'd reused from last time, but just developing it all again each time. And every cycle was taking a long time. It was very manual, very slow. We rarely found the issues that needed to be going. We'd have endless times where we'd be on a call at 2 AM because our payment system went down while we were at peak bookings. We just released a whole load of new flights and we're at peak sales, and our payment system goes down because they found a bug in it, and it wasn't good. What we're aiming for, and we're still on this journey, I've not got there yet, and as I'll talk about culture, it doesn't just happen overnight. I want us to be seen as the advocates of quality. We're an important part of the puzzle that's engaged as early as possible to ensure quality is built in. We're defining standards and principles across all areas. And we take this automation first approach, complemented by exploratory testing. We don't believe we should automate everything. We believe we should automate the right things, and I'll come on to that in a minute. So how do we get there? You need someone to step up above the parapet, put their head out and say, right, we need to change. And I did that. I'm not saying I'm a great leader. I'm saying I was the one that stepped up to try and drive us forward. I earned the team's trust by starting to show the passion, being here, doing the podcast, doing everything I can to say, hey, look, there's more to testing than what we're currently doing in the building. Collaboratively, we got everyone together and we started working on what we call the quality engineering principles. Some of you may have seen some of these posts on LinkedIn or seen it somewhere else, but we've shared this as wide as we could. These are our principles that we live and breathe every day within the quality engineering team. Everything points to the culture. We've got the automating all the right things. So we don't try and automate everything. We look at the ROI, we work out what makes the most sense to automate. We build testability as a foundation. Everything should be testable from the start. So we work with the teams to ensure requirements are testable, designs are testable, and we continue to move forward in that area. Risk and value-based. Risk-based testing is a big part of our landscape because we've got 170 systems in our estate. There's thousands of possibilities for testing. We work on a risk-based attitude of where's the most likely failures, where's the most likely areas that we need to cover. we started using data for our testing. One example, when I joined the digital booking team that did all the web booking pages, their standard test case for booking the website was a family of 4. Makes sense? Yeah, booking a family of 4 ticket. When we looked at the data, over 50% of our travellers are single travellers. So therefore, we changed the scope of. We still had the test case with 4 because there was different nuances to that, but majority of our test cases then became that journey of single traveller, because that was the most prevalent user journey. And we use that with all of our data now. Every time we come to a new scenario, we look at the data first as what are the customers actually doing. And that might be external customers. That might equally be if it's a corporate product, it might be our day-to-day M&A staff or our crew have to be able to use the system. What is their journey that they're using most of the time? And then we've got the continuous improvement. We're constantly reviewing retrospectives, everything else to try and work out how can we improve the way we're doing testing. And then we came up with our policy engineering model. Very similar to the DevOps approach, but take the DevOps approach, but it's continuous testing. Everything from discovering, where you determine the value, you test the idea through planning, understanding. We've rephrased NFRs to system quality characteristics because it gets more traction in meetings, by the way. NFRs, people ignore. System quality, they seem to understand. Test data creation, looking at environments. Then we test the stories and features, we peer reviews, coding standards, static analysis. Then we deploy, we release, and we've got monitoring and observability in production. This is not in place for every system in EasyJet. This is the ideal model that we're moving towards. Some of the more digital focused teams are there. Some of our more manual teams are still on that journey. But this is where we're going. All of that baked in with KPIs and OKRs underneath as well. So we're trying to get there. When it comes to empowering and growing the team, we created a safe to fail environment. So people weren't suddenly being blamed for defects being left in the code. We were starting to let them investigate stuff. We were starting to let them have time trying out a new tool or a new technique to see if it improved the way we did things. It didn't, never mind what we learned, what we move on with. Started giving them confidence to speak up and talk about testing. In our weekly team all hands team meeting that we're having, at that point back in 2020, 2021, there was only about 10 of us in the team. We started rotating. We took the test sphere cards out. If any of you know about the Ministry of Testing test sphere cards, we'd pick a random card, I'd give it to someone and say, right, next week, come back with a 5-minute presentation on that topic. Giving people the chance of a 5-minute conversation. It's in a safe audience, come back and present for 5 minutes. We're all rooting for you, just come and have a go. And we rotated that for a 6-month, 7-month period, and people started getting more confident in talking about testing. That then enabled them to speak up in their team meetings when they're working with the developers and the PMs and stuff to say, hey, we could test this better. It just changed that completely. We created some testing career paths. When I joined, test manager and tester were the only roles we had. So straight away, we looked at a senior tester, then we looked at a test architect, test lead. We've got senior test managers as now, and we're starting to bring in some different roles as well around SDETs and automation architects as well. So we're trying to build the right approach. We've got a proper structure to the growth path that we've got within the EasyJet. I then made some new hires. This is back in 2020, 2021, that disrupted the norm. I brought people in that were really passionate, really active in the community, were, frequent conference speakers that really had a lot of passion to bring into the business and could change things, could start talking about it more and get the energy up in the room. At the time, it was a couple of test leads and a test architect. So we brought this new test architect role in, we'll talk about in a second. One of the test leads was Lavina, who's talking on the virtual track later this afternoon. And we've continued to grow the team by bringing a certain caliber of people in that are enthusiastic, passionate about testing as a whole, not just the 9 to 5, I'm going to sit and do my testing and not look outside to see what else could be done better. So this test architect role. When you say test architect, the first assumption is, they have to be hugely technical and just be all about automation. Test architects at EasyJet are more quality coach focused. So they have to know about automation, but they're not the ones that are going to be writing tons of automation code. They are thought leaders. They're mentoring and coaching the wider technology teams into how to do testing better, whether that be the developers, whether that be the BAs, whether that be the end users. Everything is about how we can make the systems more testable and of a higher quality. They advocate and shout about the quality engineering principles at all opportunities. They set the vision and they help define the strategy in all areas. They have a quality transformation roadmap, which they're working through, which might be about defining a standard for how we use JIRA for defects. It might be about defining UAT processes that involves the end user rather than just being about testing, defining the UAT test cases. Bringing processes together that is a more collaborative approach. And they do work with defining the automation roadmap and working with the teams to pick the right tools. One of my biggest wins over the last 2 years has been changing our name from QA to quality engineering. Straight away, just by changing our name, the conversation is different. Because I made a point of selling that the quality engineering means quality throughout the life cycle, not just at the end. Suddenly everyone is starting to realize, okay, we need to include the QE guys first at the start. So changing tester to quality engineer, QE architect, QE manager, et cetera, rather than tester, test manager, et cetera. And it's then being persistent with every time someone calls it a tester, someone's going, quality engineer, and just making sure they get the message. And eventually it starts to embed. Then it's about engaging and inspiring the team. So you've built the passion, you've set the standards, you've started building the foundations. We have an old internal community of practice. We have a monthly session where we all include in our internal testers and our external supplier testers, because the mix up at EasyJet is about 20 perms to 120 offshore testers. That's our mix at the moment. We're trying to change that balance, but we're trying to, at the moment, that's what we have. But with the internal community practice, we didn't just say, right, only testers can come along. We opened it to the business. We made the adverts open to all of technology. Everyone in the 400 strong technology group was invited along, and we'd get some external speakers in to come and talk. Whether it be about automation, security testing, accessibility, building a culture of quality, getting people from the outside world that could come in and share their stories. And people were really engaged. We started getting people in that could really change the dynamic, and people were going, I want to try that out. I want to go and have some time looking at accessibility tools or looking at some way we can use security testing that won't upset InfoSec, and try and improve the processes we had. We also got Ministry of Testing Pro membership for all members of the team. And we're not just saying, right, there's your Pro membership, go and play with it when you feel like it. We're setting learning pathways based on what skill sets they want to move to. So if you've got someone that really wants to get into exploratory testing, someone in the team's gone and found a whole load of exploratory testing talks, blogs, videos, podcasts on the Ministry of Testing site, set out a learning path, and not just saying, go and watch the talk, but asking the question, what learning are you taking away from that you're going to apply on stage of? And starting to get people to think more than just sitting blindly in front of a screen, but actually, what am I learning from this? What can I take back? What can I try out the next time I do exploratory testing? And just starting to change that narrative. And myself and my leadership team, we're all active in the community, and we lead by example. We encourage everyone in the team to take an opportunity, whether that be write a blog for an internal purpose, whether it be just stand up in an all hands meeting and talk for 10 minutes about what you're doing in testing, or whether it be do something external. We really want to share that love of EasyJet, of what we're doing at EasyJet, and show the good stuff that's going on. With that, we've also built specialist communities within EasyJet, within testing. And these are groups that are open not just to technology, to the whole wide business, and looking at specific topics. So we've got a performance guild. We look at performance testing, how we can improve performance of all of our systems, whether that be the website, whether it be the system that schedules flights, or how we predict how much the pricing is going to be for each ticket. Those systems look at how we can improve that performance. We have an accessibility guild. Now, the important thing with this one was this isn't just about accessibility testing. This is even going as far as accessibility in the airports, and how we can ensure that systems are set up in the right way to enable anyone that needs any kind of access is able to do so. So we've got someone from our legal team that's registered blind that's helping us push the systems that they use on how we can ensure our testing is better on those. But we're also looking at that airport accessibility as well. Security Guild, where we're working with InfoSec to try and build out our security practices. historically, InfoSec have their own pen test partners, and we do an annual test on most systems, whereas we're saying, no, let's shift it there, let's move it into the sprints, let's get people doing basic security testing, but that's a challenge that we're still working towards. The Automation Guild, not just about automating tests, it's about automating processes, full stop, and we're looking at different ways we can do that across the groups. And then the final one's the Exploratory Guild. And again, this is, let's take a system and let's exploratory test it as a group on a monthly basis. We'll do that. So those are more focused on particular test practices. We then, Suman Bala, who joined as a test architect, came up with the idea of starting the test. If any of you know Suman, you know she's full of energy and sort of talk about testing at every opportunity. So she suggested this test party Friday afternoon for a couple of hours. You know, when we've got rid of the core work and we're feeling like we can slow down a bit, we set this test party up where we would invite not just technology team, but we get directors, we get CIOs, we get everyone come along, come and see the test party, come and join us. And we started with, we're going to take one of the systems, an exploratory test, we'll split into pairs on teams and do it virtually, and we'll have all these little groups going. I had the director of tech, the director of architecture, the director of data science all on this call, and they're going, didn't realise you testers did so much. And they were finding defects in the code because we were showing them how to do exploratory testing, and they were actually getting into the depths of it. And it's just setting the awareness up. But you know, some weeks we would do the exploratory testing. Like I say, we'd invite the leaders. Other weeks we'd watch a talk, and then we'd whiteboard the actions on the back of it. We'd talk through it and how we could apply that to how we improve at EasyJet. And we slowly started to change that perception of QE. But then it was about how do we find every opportunity to speak about quality outside of the testing teams. So we'd set up lunch and learns to the wider organisation. So we talk about actually what we're doing day to day and how we're working with the teams. We get invited along to IT team meetings to talk about testing in that particular area. So whether it be the corporate team or the operations teams would say, we come talk about how you're testing our AIM solution, which is what does the flights. We do training sessions to engineering teams on testing, so writing unit tests or code review process, all that kind of thing to ensure we were doing the right things. Then we set about finding your allies. You can talk at all these, you can have all these different meetings where you're talking to lots of people and a lot of people walk away and go, yeah, fine, that's good, but I'm going to leave it in the meeting and not think about it outside the meeting. You'd have a few people that would come to you with lots of questions like, hey, how can we do more of that in our team? And that's your chance to build that ally. To go away, hey, come for a coffee, I'll walk you through some stuff. Let's see what we can improve in your area. So we seeked out those voices and we tried to share with them what we were trying to achieve, getting them a bit more of the behind the detail type stuff to try and improve that relationship. We convinced them without saying, hey, can you become an advocate? But we worked with them to convince them that they would advocate for us. The more people you have that shout about what you're doing that aren't coming from your own team, it's amazing how much that amplifies the voice. You can get someone that's not a tester to talk about how great the testing is. It really helps improve that dynamic within the wider business. And that really helped us improve where we're going with EasyJet. Once we've got those allies in place and everything else working, we can then start to use that to really help show the test improvements we're making. So as a team, we collaborate on ideas and work out what we can improve. We demonstrate to the business how these ideas would help improve quality. So we get that preempt in before we did the work to say, hey, look, we're going to do this. This is what we're hoping to improve. Some of the biggest successes we've had have been in the test automation space. One of our core systems is our self-service disruption management. So when a flight gets cancelled, you log into this portal, you change to another flight, or you book your hotel room if the flight's been delayed till overnight. And that system during the pandemic obviously went through the roof because every flight was cancelled, everybody was disrupted, and everything was manual. We had to do everything manual, and we were releasing regularly because of the issues that were happening. But in the last few months, we've managed to reduce the testing time down from 16 days to 12 minutes because of the automation we've got in place. Now means we can release more frequently, now means we can start building. On top of that, look at the exploratory testing process, how we can improve the performance. And this is just through using Cypress and using standard automation tools, but actually looking at the problem and going, What do we need to test? What can we remove? How can we ensure we've got value into what we're delivering? That's one example. Then in our payment space, we've used Newman to create reporting boards for us so that we can see genuinely how well the testing is going, and even just having an interface to look at the results. A big step forward in some areas. In other areas, we're reducing regression packs down from thousands of tests to a couple of hundred or to 50 to try and show that we've got a lot of duplicate tests we don't need, and then we're automating those tests to show the value. We set up a testability review process. So, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of different methodologies at EasyJet. Some of the teams that are more waterfall-y, is that a word? You get the big BRD documents with the 20, 30 pages of requirements. I'm looking at Colin because I know what he's going to talk about in his talk. The requirements documents, and they'd just be very generic statements all the way through. So we said, right, we're going to take time. We're going to, we'll take the hit for the timing of this. We're going to sit with you and we're going to walk through every single requirement and tell you whether it's testable, whether we can identify a single test case based on what's written as the requirement, not making any assumptions, just exactly what's written on the page. Can we identify a test case? And we went through this first document, this first project, and it was about 36, 37% testable throughout the document. And we're going, you need to change the requirements. You need to remove the ambiguity. You need to put specifics in there. And the BA went away and rewrote the document, come back to us, and we got to like 84%, 85% testable. And then we went through the project. We were already clued up on what needed to be tested. We'd already got that leg up, and we managed to release without minimal defects in the last phases before we released. So it was really positive experience. We reduced the testing time down from what was 6 weeks down to about 2 weeks because of this testability process. We've got that PM on board. PM suddenly like, hey, great, this process is awesome. I'm going to go and talk to my other PM friends and tell you what they need to do for their projects. And it is starting to snowball. Problem is, it's not a quick process. It's not something you want to automate. You want to be able to do it together in people and talk about it. So this is what we're trying to build now and getting the advocates in to try and improve that process. We introduced exploratory testing. We've got that going as a practice now. It's not perfect. It's not everywhere, but where it is, we're making some real traction on using exploratory testing. And risk-based testing is a term we're actually using around the business a lot now, and we've got this weighted testing dashboard that talks about which areas are the higher risk and where we should focus our testing, and it gets people talking, it gets the business on board with it because they understand what it is. It's important to do all that stuff, but it's also important to make sure you're not going off in a direction that the business aren't happy with. So having regular touch points with the business, getting feedback, getting review comments from how the project's gone for them. Did they feel engaged? Were we overbearing? Were we taking on too much? We'd send out pulse surveys to keep people within the projects. And then we'd work through the improvements. So if there were some negative comments, one of us would go, let's go for coffee, let's go for lunch, let's go and talk about it and see what we can do to bring you on board and help improve that situation. The advice to you all would be ready for a journey though. If you're building a culture, it can be a bumpy road. You may have your eyes set on one particular destination point. You may find you veer over to the left, but if you get somewhere that's improving from where you were 2 weeks ago, then you're making progress. Continuously improving is key. So as long as you're improving on what you did yesterday, then that's a step forward. It may not be as fast as you want. It may not be in exactly the way you want, but if you're making progress, then that's something to shout about. There will be patches where you're feeling frustrated, you're feeling angry, you're not getting the progress you want, you're getting people that are pushing back on things. It will get rocky, and it's about looking at the bigger picture. And I say this in a moment where things can get very rocky to a point that you're thinking, why does it bother? But actually, again, look at the bigger picture, look at what you've already built, look at what people you've got around you, and you'll see that there is still a purpose to fight for. Culture doesn't have a definitive end. So you may say, that's my destiny, that's where I want to get to. But be prepared to change course, be prepared to keep working in the direction that makes sense. It may not be where you intended to get to, but if the culture's growing and evolving, then you're doing a good thing. You should be proud of what you're achieving. So, in summary, the longest journeys start with the first step. Be prepared to over-communicate. Share, and continuously do so. Share successes no matter how small. So even if you've you've reduced the test case count down from 100 to 95. Hey, we've removed 5 test cases, we've improved the coverage, whatever it is that you want to talk about. Collaborate. Make sure you're sharing what you're doing with other people. Promote the importance of quality, and being quality advocates, everyone should be able to shout about quality. But most importantly, have fun. Thank you very much. Whether we've got time for questions or not. If anyone's got a question, fire away. Yeah.
Nice talk, brilliant idea of changing culture and good example there. How did you get top management buy-in? Because you're going to change everything in the organisation, lots of expense in doing that, presumed. How do you get that top buy-in?
Starting small and getting your direct manager on board was a good start. So getting them to then buy into what you're doing, take that one step further. And it is, there's no point setting a 5-year vision. It's going to cost you 10 million over 5 years to do this. It's taking one step at a time, looking at the small things you can change, getting that buy-in. But in your own world, having some kind of document or plan that's showing where you want to get to, and maybe keeping that on a down low, but sharing the little bits that you need to share. But yeah, don't go big and say, oh, it's going to cost 10 million, we're going to have quality solved by the end of it. It's about taking small jumps along the way. Yeah.
Similar sort of question about buy-in, but the other side, how would you talk to new starters or graduates or people new to the industry about this and get their sort of buy-in?
Good question. Immerse them straight away. So if we're hiring graduates into testing, then yes, share the cultural quality aspirations with them, get them bought in early, get the passion fired up in them, and really start to use them as advocates, because they're fresh in, they've got a fresh voice. Use them to be the ones that say, why have you not got tested, or why have you not got quality engineers in the team? Get them to challenge, make the awkward challenges, because they're fresh. Someone will come back to them and they go, oh, but that's not what Simon's doing. Simon wants you to do this, and then you've got that thing. So yeah, it's using them to really fuel that passion. And hey, I'm really passionate about getting out to universities and getting more testers from universities. So if we can get out to universities and get this message started earlier, then I'm all for it.
Immediate brainwash. Got it.
This is when people are in the hamstering of delivery, how do you get them out? Because in my team, we have agile squads.
Yeah.
And all the QAs are like, they can do only that. This is big change and everybody has to contribute. How do I do that?
Yeah, there's a certain element of not expecting everyone to take part all the time. And yeah, it looks like there's a lot of having to talk about stuff. It's not as much as it looks. One of them's only sort of every couple of weeks. It's not all of them at once. We try to make sure that any agile squads are not 100% committed. They have an 80%, 20% split, so that 20% time can be used a bit more flexibly for things like being part of the community or doing some innovation stuff. Doesn't always work like that. There's always times when they're completely overloaded and I just can't attend this week. Fine, no problem. But we try and share whatever we've learned in those sessions with everyone anyway. So everyone's got the opportunity to take it up when they've got time to look at it. And we have a permission to pause every 2 weeks at EasyJet, where you get a 2-hour window on a Thursday to do learning or to go for a walk or do stuff like that. So that's when we sort of might say, hey, there's a podcast, go and listen to that while you're out on a walk, or we've done this recording, and get people get involved in those scenarios.
I remember from last year how you assess the evolution of your community and your team from a year ago to this moment.
Oh, there's
Because
a
you
question.
mentioned a lot of
Yeah. So we've managed to bring more people in. I've now got a direct leadership line underneath me that complete, got 4 senior QE managers underneath me, and they're able to drive their own communities within their areas. So it means I can be a lot more strategic. This time last year, I was still in the weeds. So we're building that, and it's enabling us to start putting our arms out further to bring more people from wider areas of the business in. And we've got much more traction in more areas now. With our operations space, for instance, we've got a really positive testing cycle going on there. Our corporate space, our AD and patching process is now under test work or QE work as well. We're doing a lot more in different areas than we were last year.
to expand them.
Expanding.
And one more, you mentioned before, like if we have like graduates, it's
Yeah.
only if or you already plan to have it and.
How do I say this in the right way? I would like to bring more graduates in. At the moment, that's not the direction that we are moving in. Yes, senior levels and suppliers to fill the we're working. So come back to me in a year's time, it might be changed.
Just a quick question. So I think over 80% of your test team is offshore. Is that about
Yeah,
right?
about right.
So obviously a huge part of this is the collaboration. So do you find both teams coming back and forth to the UK to offshore? And how much do you do that? Or do you find that you can do it all remote perhaps because of COVID? And
So we are in the process of an RFP process to change the suppliers we use. Because we want to bring people in from the start in this new culture. Whereas they're not bad teams of testers, but they've been embedded in the EasyJet for 20+ years, these suppliers. So they're not quick to change. So it's trying to work out how we can evolve the process, and by bringing a new partner in that's completely aligned to our strategy, that's the intention of then driving forward in the new world. So it's a challenge. There's some really good people, but the overall dynamic is still, oh, it's not the way we used to do it. Yeah, that we're telling you this is the way we're going to do it going forward, and it's trying to change that dynamic.
And is that all remote over sort of teams, or do you?
We bring them on shore for a period of time, but we're only in the office 1 day a week, so it's a bit like you're going to sit in a hotel room for 4 days a week, but you come to the office for 1 day, so it's a challenge.